Today we are going over all the highlights from the 2023 Ring Championship of Azul and our final table of Scott Leader, Andrew McCauley, Danielle Wallace, and Simon Balser. This was a really exciting game because the winner, Scott Leader, didn't look like he was winning for most of it. There were a couple key plays, and what I want to do for this one is sort of break down the positioning at the end of each round. If you'd like to watch the full event, we can go check out the link down below. It was hosted live on the Dice Tower at the time of the event, commentated by Z and Camilla of the Dice Tower. When you think about it, it only took these players winning 3 games of Azul to get to this point. You have a chance to make it through the ranks, to make it to that final table, and maybe take home the ring for yourself. Tickets are still available for the 2024 World Series of Board Gaming. And Azul is one of those things where, because especially in a 4-player game, things are have so much flow, being able to anticipate what's going to happen doesn't always fall into your lap as it may in a 2-player game. Players played through a variety of player counts to get up to this point, but maximum they would have had to defeat just 9 people to get to this spot and earn their seat in the final table. So I want to talk about a couple moments here in the first round, because for me, at the end of this first round, there are 2 kind of clear leaders in the scenario. And Scott, although being a leader himself as his last name, wasn't ahead at the beginning. I would give the points maybe to Danielle or maybe to Simon. The reason why I'm inclined to give it to Danielle is because Danielle is going to put these 3 tiles, this is the state at the end of the game, at the end of the round, Danielle's going to put those 3 tiles in the second column, giving her that flexibility on either side. Simon has chosen or has been forced into choosing this last column, and in order to build upon those points and keep chaining those points, getting 2 and then 3 and then 4 as you progress throughout the game, it's a little bit more difficult. Although Simon does have the starting of his 5th column here in place, and Danielle is also working with a -1. So I feel like it's kind of even there. But there was a kind of a huge moment for Scott that I think Scott really missed out on. If you look back here, Scott has a choice at this moment in time to decide what to take. And Scott opts for, with this move as it's coming up, as the board shifts, Scott right here opts to start his 3rd row of light blue. He's doing this as a blocking move for Andrew. He doesn't want Andrew to be able to just scoop those up easily. He's hoping that maybe he can scoop up a 1 and a 1 and that it will get back to him. A decent gamble, but it is one that ultimately doesn't pay off completely for Scott, leaving him with an empty space in that 3rd row, which is pretty significant because you want to fill up those first 3 rows pretty consistently in Azul. I understand Scott's reasoning. There was 2, they were absolutely going to be scooped up by Andrew. He's playing a correct blocking game, and ultimately he wins the game, so perhaps this was the right call. But I thought it was a really neat pivot point when he could have chosen these 2 blacks as well. But I think he hopes to be able to get this one of the remaining light blues that are in play, and he also hopes to get these 2 black, and he ends up getting neither of those, which when I was watching the game, I thought, oh man, Scott's out of it, and he really had to claw back from that. So a really important decision that happened early on, which put him on the back foot and really made him scramble to catch up. Now in 4-player Azul, that's not that bad being on the back foot, because people see your score and people see that you haven't gotten a whole bunch of points, and you can kind of delay your push forward as not being the point leader, since Azul is a game of denial as well. But at the end of the first round, I would have given it the lead to Danielle, who is a phenomenal Azul player. But I thought that decision point right here, going back, is one that if I were Scott and I had lost, I might have been thinking about over and over. Luckily, Scott could walk away with his beautiful ring and he doesn't have to worry about that. I also know some of the competitors might be watching this, and you can feel free to chime in down below as to your thought processes as well, in case I've gotten anything wrong. But that was a real highlight for that first round for me. Let's move on to the end of round 2. Man, I could just analyze every single move of this game, but I'm going to try to keep it short. What I think is a really interesting play here from Andrew, and again, a potential questionable play here, and I'm interested to watch and see who gets this single black piece. There's only 1 black piece that has popped out, and for Andrew's board, if we go back and we look at it, Andrew didn't get anything in his first row in that first round, and it appears like he's not going for anything in his first row. In the second round, he opts to take these 2 light blue gems, which feels like the incorrect order of prioritization. There is only 1 black piece that is turned up. There will be approximately 9 black pieces, I think, that will come up guaranteed in the next round. But because of his placement of this red, and because over on the other corner, Simon needs that black piece to expand his level 1 row so that he can score 2 points for its placement and not just 1. Simon, who is the current leader at 6 points, I feel like taking these 2 blue probably wasn't the most necessary thing. Danielle's probably going to target these yellows. The yellows are going to go quick. There are a ton of yellow and there are a ton of red in this situation. And so it's a really, really good setup for Simon up in seat 4, and a really, really bad setup for Scott down in seat 1, who will be playing last in this round, because there's no way for Scott to finish his row of 5. Again, he's sort of locked out. And so I feel like Andrew would have had a chance to get those 2 blue at another time, could have locked in that lone black piece and made everybody else fight over everything. But he doesn't opt for that. He wants to lock in his number 4. I think he's feeling the pressure of having 2 incomplete rows, and potentially that's why he makes that decision. But you can see, as we scroll a little bit ahead, after everybody's taken a first move, Simon obviously scoops up that black piece, and that is a piece that Andrew desperately needed. And so by not paying attention to what's going on around the board, Andrew denies himself of that locking that place up. Now, if we scroll ahead, we see Andrew's plan. Andrew gets a bunch of tiles working towards, now shifting his focus, working towards that 10-point bonus for the same color, really doubling down on that. But we can see that Danielle has prioritized moving and filling in that central row, and Simon has expanded outwards. The opening plays of Azul can kind of telegraph what your opponents will be searching for and what you need to prioritize over the others. And you can see by the amount of blues that Andrew's been able to scoop up, nobody was really prioritizing those blue gems. It's kind of very notable in the second round. Again, solid play and solid dropping in by Danielle and Simon. They sort of soar ahead, and Scott has to do some work here to set himself up for some big combos down the line and hope that things fall into play. He gets this 1 red, which is pretty huge because he has the orange and the black, so he'll be able to lock in a nice 4-point bonus there. And this crisscross strategy is actually really effective for Scott, because if, for example, you got points in a row, right? You're getting points in a row in Azul. You're going to score 1 point, then 2 points for those first 2 that you drop down. It's a total of 3 points. Then if you go into the row next to it, you're going to score 2 points and 4 points, which gives you a total of 9 points. Now, if you do it in a crisscrossing fashion, you're sort of hoping that you get enough of the same color to make that crisscross work, and to make that crisscross work effectively, depending on how it's placed in this sort of red and red situation. But if you drop it in like that on the next round, you've actually gotten 1 point, 1 point, and then you've gotten 4 points and 4 points, which makes 10. You actually eke out 1 extra point. So although it looks like you might be a little bit behind, that crisscrossing fashion is gives you a little bit less flexibility, but it can give you more points down the line. And that's how we can see Scott start to creep up here, which I think is really neat to witness. And we see Scott does exactly that. And looking at Scott's board position, he says, okay, I'm not going to worry about locking in this 5 black that he's been locked out of. He manages to get that crisscross, which also contributes towards a potential 5 color down the line. And again, both Danielle and Simon, you can see going down that singular line, which is what made me believe that they were ahead throughout the game, but the crisscross catching up of Scott actually worked out really, really well in a very nice way. It's a bit of a riskier strategy because you don't know that color's going to come out. By the end of round 2, we'd seen 16 out of the 20 red tiles before they went back into the cycle. And probability-wise, that may not have happened, right? They may have ended up in the bag. You might have seen a lot more black tiles come out, and then that second one would have really hit Scott's points, but he makes a really good comeback here and puts himself within striking distance. As you can see, he scoops up a decent amount of points, getting to 9 points, although Simon soars ahead to 18 after the first round. I want to point out something too. This is the end of the third round, and Scott is still sitting with those 3 black pieces that he got in round 1. He did not devote energy to filling out those black pieces because he knows the value of chaining these pieces up in that higher area. This is also potentially, this delay is potentially strategic, right? He's waiting until he gets that full column so that at least when he drops it in, he can score 12 points, 5 for the row, and then the additional 7-point bonus for that column bonus. And so I think that delay, knowing that he couldn't complete it in the second row, in the second age, that's fine. Then he sort of abandons it in the third age. He had the chance to take black, but he takes these 3 black, as you can see on the board, his ending board position, because he knows it's much better to invest in those black than to get 1 point down there. The points are too tight, and if you have the space for them, you should absolutely go for this position. I think this decision right here shows Scott's skill, and that choice of, a lot of people might have been tunnel visioned on, okay, I gotta finish this row. It's been unfinished for 2 rounds. I can't have it unfinished for the 3rd round, but Scott doesn't care about that. He goes for it, he lets that happen, and he focuses on garnering those points up in the top as well. And then you can see in the 4th round, that's when he pivots to his blue. He's focusing on his blue. He's hoping that he can grab the blacks to finish with a 10-point bonus as he set himself up in this other row for a solid black drop. If he can scoop up the blacks, the double black at the end, he's going to get a huge score. And he manages to scoop up these 4 black at the end. He has just a monstrous 4th round. Again, not prioritizing filling in those black. He's had those blacks for the entire game just sitting there, but he focuses on creating these patterns, locking it in, not pulling the trigger on the black until he can get those extra 3 points. And I think that is pretty huge. I think in a perfect world, Scott was hoping to be able to get both the black and the light blue bonus. He is unable to do so because he hasn't completed that final row. That's the danger of this, but he knows he has to capitalize on when that final row goes in. He knows he has to make sure that he gets the pieces that he needs, and he just has such a huge, monstrous catch-up. You can see his first move is to fill that black row in. He says, yes, I need to fill in that column. I don't need to worry about these top 2 things. There's enough going on. He hopes that he can get these 2 black. There's enough black out there, and there's enough light blue that he's potentially going for. Although here, I imagine Danielle picks up these 2 light blue, which isn't a hurt to Scott because he knows he's ahead in turn order of Andrew. I imagine that's what happens here. Well, it turns out it doesn't happen, but he knows he's got 2 turns. He sees Simon scoop up those 2 light blue, Simon needing that to finish his row. Now, you'd think Scott would immediately grab on his turn the 1 single light blue, but there are actually 1 single light blues out there. He knows that Andrew is going to take 1. The other one will be left for him. He snags the black almost immediately because he knows he needs that 10-point bonus to get the black, and then when it comes around back to him, nobody has a reason to block him because they all have their own things that they're cooking. So it's a really fascinating thing to watch, just watching that progression and watching how long those black ones sit at the bottom, knowing that Scott is focused about getting that black bonus, getting all 5 black, which eventually lets him eke out a win just slightly over Danielle, who comes in second. By inches. Danielle had such a methodical game. If you want to see a really methodical game, you should look at Danielle's play. But Scott manages to pull it out with some really clever positioning and showing that the crisscross strategy can potentially work. Those are the highlights from Azul. If you want to watch the full match under that lens, go check it out. Again, Azul is a game that most board gamers out there know how to play, and I know that there are some good players out there. I want to see you at the final table. Tickets are still available. If you've got what it takes to defeat pretty much a maximum of 12 people, you can win yourself a $3,000 championship Azul ring, a spot in the semifinals where you can play for the $25,000, and bragging rights for all eternity. These are 4 great players, but I know there's some more great players out there, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the World Series. Go down, get your tickets at WSBGVegas.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be here to bring you all the highlights from 2023 as we build up to 2024 in Vegas. My name is Chris George, and from all of us here at the World Series of Board Gaming, what are you waiting for? It's time to get in the game.